The pressurization system on the A340 normally operates automatically to adjust the cabin altitude and rate of change of altitude to ensure maximum passenger comfort and safety. The pressurized areas are the cockpit, the avionics compartment, the cabin, and the cargo compartments. The concept of the system is simple. Air is supplied from the air conditioning packs to the pressurized areas. Two outflow valves are used to regulate the amount of air allowed to escape from the pressurized areas. Automatic control of the outflow valves is provided by two cabin pressure controllers. Each controller has an electric motor to move each outflow valve. The combination of a controller and two motors is known as a system. Only one system will operate at any one time, with the other system acting as backup. A third motor is installed on each outflow valve for use in the event of failure of both automatic systems. A manual input is required to open or close the outflow valve.
Safety valves are installed to avoid excessive cabin differential pressure. Note that the negative relief valve, which assists the safety valves in preventing the cabin pressure from going too low, is not represented on the ECAM.
Let us look at the operation of the outflow valves for an aircraft in cruise and what happens to cabin differential pressure, cabin altitude, and cabin vertical speed. We will start with cabin differential pressure. If the outflow valves are closed or only allowing a small amount of air to escape, then the cabin differential pressure will increase. Now let's look at what happens to cabin altitude. If the outflow valves are closed or only allowing a small amount of air to escape, then the cabin altitude will descend. We can also see what the cabin is doing by referring to the vertical speed. When the outflow valves close, the cabin altitude will decrease with a negative vertical speed. If the outflow valves are fully open, a lot of air is allowed to escape. The cabin pressure will decrease. The cabin altitude will increase with a positive vertical speed. The crew can monitor all cabin pressure functions on the ECAM cabin pressurization page. Let's look at the information associated with the pressurization system that is presented on the cabin pressurization page. The pack indication is displayed green when the associated pack is on. The outflow valve's position can be monitored, and the system controller in use is shown. There is a single indication for the two safety valves. We will look at how this indication changes in the abnormal operation module. The cabin differential pressure, or delta P, shows the difference in PSI between the cabin pressure and external pressure. This differential pressure will be at zero on the ground and increase as the aircraft climbs. The cabin vertical speed shows the rate of change of cabin altitude in feet per minute. For passenger comfort, the pressurization system will aim to keep this rate of change as small as possible. The cabin altitude is also shown. The vent extract and ground cooling indications are associated with the avionics ventilation system and will be discussed in a separate module. On the ECAM cruise page, there are indications of cabin differential pressure, cabin vertical speed, and cabin altitude. The cabin vertical speed is also indicated on the ECAM door page. Note that this indication is only displayed when the aircraft is airborne. On the overhead panel, the cabin pressurization panel contains controls to operate the pressurization system. Under normal conditions, no pilot action is required on this panel during flight. The pressurization mode selector push-button switch has two settings: automatic and manual. The normal position for this push-button switch is lights out. In this position, the pressurization system is in automatic mode. The use of manual mode, the manual vertical speed control, and the valve selector will be discussed in the abnormal operation module. The landing elevation selector normally remains in the auto position. Landing elevation, which is required by the pressurization system, is then provided by the FMGES based upon elevation of the destination airport. If the landing elevation is not available from the FMGES, then it can be set manually using this selector. You will use this selector in the abnormal operation modules. The guarded ditching push-button switch is provided to close all valves below the waterline so that the aircraft can be sealed in the unlikely event of a ditching.